Don't renounce your US citizenship. This is coming from somebody that actually renounced their US citizenship a couple of years ago. There's many multimillionaires all over the world, or soon to be millionaires, specifically in crypto, for example, or you made a big investment and you're going to make a significant capital gain in the future. And as you know, the United States taxes you on your worldwide income no matter where you live and chases you all over the world no matter where you go. Even if you go to the moon, they're going to track you there, and banks are going to ask you if you're a US citizen, and obviously you need to be truthful about it. And getting a second passport or getting a second residency doesn't really do much for a US citizen because you're still a US citizen, specifically if you were born in the United States. If you go and get St. Kitts citizenship or Turkish citizenship or Serbian citizenship, it's going to say that you were born in the United States. So every bank, every crypto exchange, every investment account is going to ask you, are you a US citizen? And if you are, you need to tell them, and they're going to send that information to the United States, and you need to pay taxes on your capital gains. You need to report all your bank accounts, all your companies, everything. Trust me, I've done this for many years while living abroad, and it is brutal. There's a lot of people that book calls from this YouTube channel. They go to the link below, they book a call with us, and they say, look, I'm a US citizen. I want to get some other passport, and I want to renounce my US citizenship because I'm going to make millions in crypto, or I've made millions in crypto, or I'm going to sell some business and it's going to be $50 million, and I don't want to pay a giant capital gain to the United States. First off, before we get into that, there's the exit tax. If you're worth over $2 million or you've paid a lot in taxes before, like I have a doctor right now who's a multimillionaire, he's paid a lot of money in taxes. And even though he could gift a lot of his net worth to his family members and through other ways, he could reduce his net worth significantly. He's paid way too much in tax as a doctor, and therefore he would still have to pay the exit tax because he's a covered expatriate when you go and renounce. So be careful. If you're worth 50 million, don't go and renounce right away at some quick embassy because you might have a giant tax bill the next year. And you don't want to hide anything from the IRS because even 10 years later, they can find you. And there's some people that come to me and say, look, I want to get Vanuatu. I want to get St. Kitts. I want to get Sao Tome and Principe. I want to get Botswana, some African passport, so I can go and renounce my US citizenship. And I know personally people that have gotten African citizenship, sometimes in a very shady way, and then they go and renounce their US citizenship, and then they ask me, oh, now help me get other passports now that I renounce, and I have my African passport. And I tell them, look, a lot of these programs, citizenship by merit, a lot of citizenship by investment, if you're not from Africa, they're not going to take you. Because if you renounce your US citizenship for some African passport, that's a massive red flag, first of all. Second of all, it is a massive decision to renounce your US citizenship. I thought about it for over 3 years. It is a massive change on your life. First off, if you don't have a strong second passport, like a Spanish, a Polish, a Canadian, think about it very carefully. Because traveling the world, living in different places as a St. Kitts citizen is very different than being a US citizen. A lot of countries don't know what St. Kitts is. A lot of border guards are going to think, what is this St. Kitts passport? You're born in the US. What is this? Did you buy this? It's a different perspective. You're going to have a different experience in your life. The people that I tend to recommend to renounce their US citizenship have Canadian, they have Spanish, they have Irish. For example, I have a guy who has an Irish, a Hungarian, and a Canadian passport. Parents from Ireland and Hungary and born in Canada and naturalized as a US citizen. In that case, it's like, bro, you have 3 passports that can go to the US visa free. You really shouldn't worry at all. Now, you are technically inadmissible to the United States if you renounce your US citizenship for tax purposes. So you want to be very careful what reason you give them. Don't tell them it's because the taxes are too high. Don't tell them it's because the taxes are too much of a hassle, because you could be deemed inadmissible if you have family back in the US. Be very careful. But for those people, I tend to recommend, look, if it's a hassle on your life, you have 3 other passports, you can live in the EU, you can live in a bunch of different countries, you can go to the border of Canada and the US. It's not really a problem for you to renounce. You can live fine. In my opinion, better to be Canadian than American. For the other people that want to buy another passport and they want to renounce, your life is going to significantly change. It's not going to be easy to go back to the United States if you have family, if you want to go to a conference, if you want to visit some clients. It's not easy to get a US visa. That is why a lot of people, specifically in countries that are not as developed, or the third world, as some people say, they dream of getting a US visa because it is hard. In a lot of countries, it takes a year to get an appointment to get a tourist visa. In some cases, to get an appointment to get an investment visa. It's a long route. They're going to ask you why you renounce your US citizenship. So think about it very carefully. And, in my opinion, get multiple passports before you renounce your US citizenship. Don't get St. Kitts and renounce. That was my original plan. And then I thought, I want something more solid. I want a place that I can actually live in. I want countries where I can actually have banking, where I can actually have companies, where I can actually hire people, where I can buy an apartment, for example, and have a place to live, or I'm going to get a golden visa in Europe first and then renounce. That is what I personally recommend. That is what I personally did, because it is a massive change on your life. Do I recommend it to a lot of people? Yes, if you have the right steps in place. If you already have 2 other passports, you got St. Kitts, you got citizenship by merit, you potentially got citizenship by descent, or you're on your way to getting that. Maybe your great-great-grandparent comes from Germany or Ireland, and you're in the process, and in 2 to 3 years, you're going to have that. And in the meantime, you get St. Kitts. In 2 to 3 years, you're going to have your, let's say, Irish or Slovakian passport. Then, okay, renounce your U.S. citizenship, because there is a lot more freedom in not being a U.S. citizen, not having to do all of these reports. But you have to think about it extremely carefully. Renouncing U.S. citizenship also doesn't remove the fact that you were a U.S. citizen before, or any duties or responsibilities you had as a U.S. citizen. If you haven't paid taxes for 5 years to the U.S. and you've been living abroad, and you suddenly renounce your U.S. citizenship, those 5 years don't disappear. They can still chase you because you were still a U.S. citizen. They can't chase you for the years after, but they can put tax evasion or tax fraud on those 5 years because you didn't pay taxes while you were a U.S. citizen. If you have debts in the United States, those don't disappear. If you were born in the United States, as I said, you always have to prove that you renounced your U.S. citizenship. If you go to a bank and you were born in Miami, you have to tell them, look, I renounced my U.S. citizenship. Here's my certificate of loss of nationality. I got it at the embassy and I renounced my U.S. citizenship. And now I am whatever, Argentinian, for example. Now I'm Argentinian. I renounced my U.S. citizenship. Please let me open a bank account or a crypto account. In those cases, it works. But it doesn't remove any liability, any responsibility, any debts that you had, any criminal record. In a lot of cases, you still have to show the FBI criminal record. In the United States, because you were born there and you're from there, a lot of countries are going to ask you for the FBI report, even if you live abroad or you've been living abroad for a long time, and even if you renounce your U.S. citizenship. So renouncing isn't some magical act that removes all your past things. It's for the future, so you have a lot more peace of mind. You don't have to file F-bars. You don't have to report anything in the future. If you're a U.S. citizen and you're thinking to renounce your U.S. citizenship, first of all, have multiple other passports and multiple other countries that you can go and live in case you need it. Because if you're used to just living in the United States, have multiple other countries that you like living in. First of all, that's my recommendation. Don't get Sao Tome and Botswana and renounce, please. Second, make sure you talk to a tax lawyer or CPA in the United States that understands renunciation procedures and can take you through the risks, the documents, the taxes you have to pay if you have an exit tax. Just talk to somebody that really has experience renouncing U.S. citizenship or helping citizens of the United States renounce, please do that. And third, understand that it's not a decision that you can go back on. Understand that it's something permanent. Understand that you might need a visa to go to the United States. That even if you have an ESTA, you might get rejected at the border because you're no longer a citizen. So understand that it's a permanent decision, and then feel free to go to an embassy, renounce your U.S. citizenship, and do it knowing what you are giving up. If you want to get a second citizenship and want to have a passport portfolio, there are over 20 countries around the world that offer some sort of citizenship by investment or by donation or by merit program. You can check them out right here. All the options you have as a millionaire, check them out right here.